went on to become president of New Hampshire, and he was elected by a huge majority.
Okay. Welcome everyone to the February 12th, 2025 Dover Conservation Mission meeting this evening. And I actually, before we get started, Lori, can you read our permission for Zoom?
Sure. Following guidance issued by the governor regarding the open meeting law, this public meeting will be held remotely. Individuals wishing to participate may do so by using Zoom video conferencing technology. To join the meeting by video conference using a computer or tablet, you can click the link on the website. To join by phone, you call the number and put in the meeting ID and the passcode, and the meeting is being recorded.
Great, thank you. So welcome everyone. We kick off things generally in the beginning with a request if there are any citizen comments, anything people want to bring up that is not on this evening's agenda. And Chris Canton, Lori has filled me in that you are looking to do some water studies for Trout Brook. Is that correct? No? Wrong Chris then.
Apologies. The student's name was Chris, and I thought that's who that was. Sorry.
There you go. There's only one Chris in the world, apparently. Well, then we don't have to worry about that unless there are any citizens who would like to bring something up that is not on this evening's agenda. Hearing none, we will go ahead and proceed. The first up is we have a continuation of a request for a certificate of completion for 42 Trout Brook regarding deed recording. Janet, can you fill us in on that?
Sure. So this was a bylaw only order of conditions for a new septic system. And it changed hands, and they had not met the requirement for submitting a new deed and having that recorded. So this took a little bit of time to have that done. So I did review the original file, the order of conditions. I did conduct a site inspection, and they are generally in compliance. However, there was one very minor deviation, which is that the signage went on the permanent bound and not on a separate post. And I thought that was definitely de minimis. It achieved the goal of putting people on notice. The second deviation was a portion of the septic. It was a very highly constrained lot. A portion was within the 50-foot disturbed. As mitigation, there was some no-mow areas of the lawn. So they were going to let the lawn renaturalize. But I don't think the new owners had been informed by the previous owners. So again, it's a fairly small, it's just two sides of the septic. And they're relatively small. And again, the homeowners were not made aware of this. I feel that it's something that the commission should make a decision. I thought maybe Dan McIntyre, who did the COC request, might be here, but he's not. So I don't think it's a big issue, but if the commission wants more information, we could defer this or discuss it further.
Was this primarily due to the, is it a raised system with a slope to it?
Yes, it has a bit of a slope.
Okay, so it sounds, I will accept your de minimis review of that. Are there any questions with commissioners? Okay.
So given that, I would recommend approval of the COC with the 4 permanent conditions, our 4 standard permanent conditions, as outlined in my report.
Okay. Now is it then up to the current owner to record that, or do we send that in for recording?
It's the homeowners who is responsible for recording.
So Lori, it would seem to me with this, we should CC Dan McIntyre and with a note that that the new owners, he should be in touch I don't know if he is in touch with the new owner, so somehow we should communicate to the new owners that they're supposed to allow that area to grow without mowing.
Okay. Shouldn't that be added to the certificate of compliance somewhere after the 4 conditions or something? Dan's no longer involved.
Okay,
They came in around Christmas time and he said he wasn't gonna be doing septic systems anymore, so, he was
Mhm.
doing something else, so,
okay. Then, Janet, that sounds logical to add a condition that that it's approved with the requirement that part of it is that in order to require them to not mow certain areas, we would have to have it noted somewhere. Is there a way to note that in text?
Yes,
Uh,
so the COC request from Dan McIntyre, Lori, it would be the first bullet. So if you could add that, I guess, as a 5th permanent condition, that the no mow slopes, just the wording Dan used. And then I would reference the as-built site plan that he submitted, which
so
was,
so
he
is
knows,
that all in the file?
yes.
Okay.
so he noted on that plan where
Yeah.
okay, great. And then Lori, my main concern there is I want to make sure that that a copy of that gets sent out to the current homeowner.
Well, it gets sent to them to record at the registry, so they'll see that.
Yeah, it's interesting that they're not the original, so and if Dan's not involved anymore, is there a way to ensure that they actually get it recorded?
Well, they have to record it or it won't close out the permit. It's to their benefit to record a certificate of compliance, so.
Okay. Then, and do you send a form for them to send back to us, showing proof of recording?
Yeah, they're supposed to give us the recording information after.
Okay. Okay, then I will entertain a motion to grant this request for the certificate of
So
completion.
move to issue a certificate of compliance of 42 Trout Brook Road, including the 4 conditions outlined in the agent's report for standard conditions, plus the condition of allowing the regrowth of the slopes as outlined in the consultants, their consultants.
In
report.
their engineering as-built?
Yeah, engineering as-built, yes.
Thank you. Do
Second.
I hear us? Thank you. All in favor? Amy?
Aye.
Anna?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay, great. Thank you. Next, we have a notice of intent for 105 Haven Street for demolition additions to include a wall, hardscape, driveway, planting. And Janet, can you fill us in?
Sure. So this is a straightforward proposal, nothing major, but it does have a number of components, including an addition to the garage, a small addition towards the back, retaining wall, reconfiguring the existing driveway. There is an overall reduction of impervious surface, so that's good. And as mitigation for doing work within the 50-foot and the 70-foot, I will note that all new disturbance is already in existing disturbed lawn area. But as mitigation for the waivers to do work in the 50-foot and the 70-foot, they are proposing to install 25 native shrubs and 3 trees. That will increase the natural buffer between the existing lawn and the BVW. The BVW surrounds Trout Brook, which is perennial. And so that's a little over 3,000 square feet of existing lawn area that is going to be allowed to renaturalize.
Okay. And let's see, we have Allison and William, is it Bill? So who would like to give us a quick presentation on this?
That would be me, Christopher Cann from Metro West Engineering.
Oh,
I'm
that
here on
Chris.
behalf
Okay.
of Brian Nelson, who
Mhm.
is unfortunately sick, and
Okay.
so I'm subbing in for him. I'm here with Allison Twiss and Ralph, William Ralph. They're the property owners at 105 Main Street. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully you can see that.
Mhm.
So basically, if you're looking at the page, north is going up the page. This colored lot, a parcel, is 105 Haven Street. Basically, the project is located on the north side of Haven Street, approximately 250 feet east of the intersection of Haven Street and Main Street. If you look at the plan, Haven Street is at the south, and the property is abutted by conservation land on all sides. The site contains approximately 2.9 acres of land. And basically, this notice of intent is for proposed additions to the house and reconfiguration of the driveway with mitigation plantings. Basically, the site gains access from a driveway off Haven Street. If you can see along the gray area.
Mhm.
The existing house is located 153 feet north of Haven Street, which is shown in the brown area. And the septic system is located west of the house, which is in this yellow area. The house is located on relatively flat area in the center of the property. Site topography is moderate with approximately 10 feet of relief across the site going west to east. Most of the site is lawn with some wooded areas located along the street and eastern side of the property. Trout Brook, a perennial stream, is located off the property to the east. And the main annual high water is basically this blue line of Trout Brook. Associated BVW runs roughly parallel to the western bank of the brook, which can be seen in this magenta light pink line, and it zigzags along the brook, Trout Brook, and a portion of the BVW does come onto the property, shown in the beige colors. The 100-foot wetland buffer zone, 200-foot riverfront area extend westerly across the site. The red line right here is the 50-foot no alteration zone or no disturb zone. This smaller pink line is the no structure zone or no build zone. And then the dark blue line is the 100-foot wetland buffer zone. In addition to that, this dark purple line is the 100-foot inner riparian zone, and the light is the 200-foot riverfront area. So essentially, the existing house, driveway, and hardscape are within the riverfront area. No stormwater controls are in place to capture or infiltrate runoff from impervious surfaces. Total existing impervious area is 9,483 square feet. Moving on to proposed conditions, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so everyone can see. So construction of the three additions are located in the blue areas. Basically, these two blues are proposed additions to the house. This one is a proposed screen and porch. And then this eastern one is basically extension to the existing garage. The proposed project includes those proposed additions, including reconfiguration of the existing driveway. If you notice, A portion of the turnout of the driveway is being removed within the 50-foot no disturb zone. And basically, we're shifting it to the other side, closer to the house. This will also include the retaining wall to account for the grading. There is a new naturalized area that will be closer to the buffer zone that will be left to naturalize and will basically be planted with mitigation plantings, which are the 25 shrubs, native shrubs, and 3 proposed trees, which are shown in the yellow. This portion in the red is existing, the house footprint. That portion will be removed to make way for the proposed addition in blue. Approximately 483 square feet of impervious area will be removed from the riverfront area. That's with everything basically proposed as is. We basically show an erosion control barrier along the driveway, and it will jet out to get rid of the existing driveway pavement and make its way towards the terminus end of the driveway, and then wrap around the back. I do want to iterate that we are removing approximately 3,000 or converting 3,185 square feet of turf lawn to naturalized area closest to the wetland. And I do want to touch upon basically Janet's comments. The stockpile can be easily addressed. As shown, we can put a stockpile down here outside the 100-foot wetland buffer zone. And in relation to stormwater improvement, we are already reducing impervious area on site. So there's no regulation or requirement to put in any mitigation measures for stormwater. In addition, in regards to the wetlands forms and winter delineation, both the BVW and mean annual high water of Trout Brook were delineated by my former colleague, our co-worker, Corey Van Wyn, wetland scientist, on January 19th, 2024. While Corey delineated the wetland and the brook, he was not able to fill out the associated DEP wetland delineation forms. Prior to his departure from our company after 22 years. It's been longer than I was around. So I would leave up to the commission on whether or not you want us to hire a third-party wetland consultant to provide those wetland delineation data forms and pay the waiver fee for the winter delineation. And with that, I'm all set.
Okay. And Janet, what are your thoughts on well, number one, as a winter delineation, is this something that could be addressed by noting that the delineation is for informational purposes only, and is not accepted as being accurate?
Yeah, so I think we're certainly coming up against this issue more as people try to move forward with projects during the winter. It's a little bit of a conundrum because as Chris just mentioned, the original delineation was done in the winter. So it would be very hard for them to submit, even if they had submitted forms, there would have been a concern that it was a winter delineation being reviewed in the winter. And the accuracy level would probably not be in a comfortable zone for that. The commission has allowed to approve projects, usually fairly minor, without approval of the delineation. And so that would be one option. But they would need to really request a waiver, a waiver for a delineation approval. And the fact.
Would they request a waiver for basically still pay the fee for a waiver request for a winter delineation?
Well, no, they wouldn't need to do that because we're not approving it. But we would at least need a request in writing that the commission approve the project without approving the delineation with some rationale for doing that. Because that is not the normal regulatory process.
And is part of that due to the fact that they're actually removing on a net basis, removing impervious surface and doing some improvements. Therefore, the scope of the job is not that significant relative to other things we've had in front of us.
Right, and that they're really not adding any new disturbance, any new structures or driveway closer to the wetlands than as is. So, Chris, I would say that would be the basis for your request for the commission to approve the project without approving the delineation, with the understanding that any going forward projects would need a delineation.
That's correct. We understand that.
So yeah, we'll need that in writing. Then the additional waiver requests are for doing work within the 50 and the 75, the 50 and 70 foot. Is that correct, Janet?
That's right.
Okay. And Lori, has those waiver requests been accepted yet? Have they come across your desk?
Actually have the file here with me, so I'm not sure. I know the winter delineation one was not submitted.
So Chris, do you know if they were submitted for waiver requests?
Yeah, Allison Twist, who's the property owner, she said she submitted the $1,000 waiver.
She did, that's right. She came in separately from the after the filing was received.
Oh, okay. So we have those those requests in hand. Okay. Anything else, Janet, that you want to bring to our attention?
No, I think that's it. So we would need a revised site plan, and the site plan should clearly say that the delineation has not been approved by the commission.
Okay.
And should also clearly show where any kind of stockpiling of material or equipment will take place. And then I think that's it.
Okey-doke. And then you addressed special conditions and things of that nature if this were to be approved.
Well, I think that I would suggest the commission wait to
Receive these.
yes, especially the delineation, the request to not require the wetland delineation approval.
Okay. Okay, commissioners, anyone have any questions or anything to add?
Nope.
Okay, so Chris et al., why don't you make these changes and give us a narrative letter in terms of why you're requesting the delineation waiver, and then we can request a continuance to our next hearing if you think that you'll be able to. Would you be able to get all those things to us within the next week?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, then why don't you plan on that, and also send that a quick email to Laura requesting a continuance to our next hearing.
Is the fee associated with the winter wetland delineation? Since we don't need a since it's not being approved, does that need to not be paid then too?
I think that's the general sense, as Janet and I were discussing, was that since you're not doing the delineation, that it's not required. Is
Okay.
that right, Janet?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Nope, I'm all set.
Okay, great. Thank you much. We'll see you a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let's see. Next we have Rule 14 Rule Drive. And we're looking for let's see, who do we have on this? We have Deb Anderson, Ron Tiberi. Janet, why don't you fill us in on where we stand with this, please?
So we had, I had received a call from the building inspector about a complaint that trees were being removed on the property. I got in touch with Patrick Corrigan, the owner, and Ron Tiberi replied that they understood that some trees were likely removed within the buffer zone. We requested that they submit a site plan, conduct a wetland delineation, and identify the trees that had been removed. So that information was submitted. And we should probably take a closer look at that. And also perhaps consider whether the commission wants to do a site inspection before any further action. But my suggestion would be that we issue an enforcement order because there was an alteration that was not permitted. And the enforcement order would require, let's see, I think I had 3, 4, 5, 6 particular action items to be included in a notice of intent. This is a situation where unlike our Miller Hill situation, where there was just wholesale removal of trees, this is a situation, if they had come to us beforehand in a notice of intent, we would have evaluated, done a tree filter analysis, and then made a determination if what could be permitted or not. So I'm suggesting a 2-step going forward. One is the enforcement order, basically requiring a notice of intent. The site plan submitted did not show the remaining trees. So the notice of intent should do that and also do a tree filter zone analysis. And then the commission could determine if this is something they would permit and if it met the regulatory standard, or if some kind of tree restoration is needed.
Okay. So do we have actually, so Ron, do you have the plan with you, the updated plan that you could share with us?
Yeah, let me see if I can put it up there. I'm actually not that good at this, but bear with me, guys.
Okay. And when was that submitted to us? Do you know?
That was submitted January 30th.
Okay.
Share documents.
I'm not sure when it went out to the commissioners, but it was submitted to the office and myself on the 30th. Which was the deadline. They did meet the deadline that we set.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this is the,
Oh, there we go.
there's the site plan. The trees highlighted in yellow are all the ones within the buffer zone.
Can you click it? Can you zoom in just a little bit, Ron?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot here. Hold on, let me get rid of this. A little bit.
Okay, there we go.
My yellow highlights are gone. I don't know why, but
Hmm.
Is that because I zoomed in, guys? I'm not.
Could be.
I don't know, we, this looks like a relatively updated,
Well, I
actually,
mean, basically, most of the properties within jurisdiction. There's a block of trees in the middle here and a couple trees back here that is not. So it's the majority of the trees that were cut were within the jurisdiction. There's no question about that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So you have wetlands coming on both sides there.
yeah,
Why don't you scale out just a little bit and see if the yellow comes back? We'll get an idea of,
does not come back.
yeah, oh, there we go.
Come back? No, not on mine.
No, still no yellow. So I'm seeing a bunch of large trees near the house that are noted in terms of size,
Yep, right through here.
and they're faded. So maybe that's where the yellow is. Are they the ones that were cut?
No,
Or
no, actually, if you look close, John, if you can see it, what the surveyor designated as FC, those are the ones that were fresh cut.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So you can see there's quite a few of the FCs.
Yep, I see. And how many was it? 37 or something like that, or?
There was 20, I got 21 within the buffer zone, and it was I think it's 37 altogether.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right, because
Okay.
I looked at so they did distinguish between a fresh cut and an old stump, but
Yeah.
the old stumps were not permitted. So really, they should still be counted in any tree removal analysis.
Okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. And then you made reference, Janet, to the stormwater rules, which would deal with setbacks, which would include rear setbacks. Is that correct?
Yes, and I believe, Ron, you have had discussions with town engineer Mike Angieri, correct?
yes, yeah, we've already talked to Mike after, definitely talked to Mike about this one.
So you do have a number in the rear there. It looked like from the couple pictures that I saw that you had some of the trees were basically they looked diseased if you had asked. They may not
Yeah,
have been.
again, I'll be honest, guys, I came in after the fact.
Yeah.
My understanding of this was that it was just gonna be a rehab project. I don't know what the deal was between the trees. There was some negotiation between the buyers and the sellers, and I have no idea how that all transpired. And then, I forget, I don't remember if it was Mike or you, Janet, that contacted Pat, and then Pat reached out to me, and I said, well, we got to get going on it. So,
So is this still a rehab, or is it going to be a tear down?
no, it's a rehab. It's
Okay.
a rehab.
Okay.
So there's no significant site work proposed. It's just that somebody got carried away with the trees, but.
Are there any trees left?
This block of trees here, I believe, are still there, and there's a few by the driveway. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jen. It's been a while since I've been out there.
Yeah,
Well,
the light colored trees are identified as old stumps.
Are old stumps, okay.
that's old. And then the FCs are towards the rear and then also the front and around the driveway there.
I just couldn't find any like real trees that are still standing.
Still.
Well, it seems like if I'm looking at Google Earth right now.
Yeah.
And there's a significant amount of trees over by the wetlands. Still on both of these, it looks like the
sides, yeah.
double lot.
Yeah.
There are numerous trees at the wetland lines.
Yeah.
And then extending into the wetlands on either side there.
Yeah.
So depending on how your squares are done, that you'll want to incorporate that so that we have a good idea of
You
what
can't count
percentage.
the ones that are in the wetlands.
Well,
That's
that's true. It's with
Right.
it. Yeah, it's buffer only. Yeah, so that's a good point. And
Were there any trees in the wetlands cut?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I
And
didn't see any here in the plan. That's why I was.
right. and that what I have on Google Earth is not updated to, within the last few months. And then what was Mike's take on your trees cut within the setback in the rear there?
The only ones we have within the setback is the rear setback ones that he wants us to address.
Right.
Right in the back.
And so is he looking at a cost, or is he looking at a replanting plan, or?
I think it's a combination depending on what him and Pat can negotiate between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But he said that Pat, that's something will have to come out of it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And did you Ron, actually look into the wetlands to see whether or not anything been cut there?
I did not see anything cut in the wetlands, but they weren't delineated when I went out there. All I saw was the cutting that was above. There's like a bank along this edge here.
Yeah.
On this edge, and it looked like they pretty much wanted to expose the house as opposed to the wetland area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it does. Looking at the trees that have been cut versus Google Earth, it clearly is to make the house more visible.
yeah,
Okay, then Jan, I think your wording for the enforcement order and the second stage there seems appropriate. To commissioners have any comments or questions on this? Okay, and I'm pulling Janet's up. So I can look at
Janet
it.
has a question, her
Okay.
hands up.
Yeah, so
Janet?
the other wrinkle here is that the wetland on the left-hand side has been identified by National Heritage as a potential vernal pool. But in regs, it is considered a vernal pool unless proven otherwise. And so there's an automatic 100-foot buffer, no disturb, that point. And so I did indicate that should be considered in the notice of intent. It brings the issue that our regs don't allow vernal pool delineations except in vernal pool season, but I think we take things one step at a time here.
Mm-hmm.
We're about to enter vernal pool season.
I guess that's true.
Well,
We'll
that's
see.
being overly optimistic.
I have a vernal pool walk in the second week of April.
Well, April, right? No, I know. I want
Well,
February to be over as quickly as
Just
possible.
2 months
That's
from now.
right,
Right.
right. So the yeah, I think it is compounded, obviously, by by having a driveway within 50 feet of the vernal pool. But like you said, Janet, I think one step at a time. Partly, Ron, this delineation was done when?
Deb went out on December 31st.
So that's also a winter delineation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Janet, relative to how we just dealt with the previous applicant, what's our window for delineation?
April 1st, we would, well, again, it all depends on ground situations, but
But
clearly
when's it end? In November or December 1st?
it's December, no delineations between December 1st and April 1st.
Got it. Okay. So, and Ron, did you have any previous delineation that you could look at, or was this was it snow free when you did this?
There was no snow when she did this. Then it was snow shortly thereafter. I think that was part of the problem with getting the stumps was surveyor went out one time, couldn't find all the stumps, and then had to go back with Deb because she had seen them prior to the snowstorm.
Okay. And part of this is a top of bank situation is what you've represented?
Yeah,
roughly?
particularly on the left-hand side, because there's actually, if I'm not mistaken, there's like a head wall and a pipe coming out of there somewhere on that left-hand side.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Janet, I'm curious in your thoughts. I mean, obviously we want to get moving on this and I appreciate the step by step. Any thoughts, or do you want to address that delineation timeframe at our next meeting?
I think, and I think let's see if I recommended this. Deb does address the winter delineation issue. They have not asked for a waiver. But she did say it was done, without snow cover.
Okay,
So we might just need to delay that since I've called for a deadline submittal of the NOI by March 19th, which would probably put us almost into April to open the hearing. So,
okay. And meanwhile, there's nothing, there's nothing that precludes them continuing with any rehabilitation of the existing building, is that correct?
right, the enforcement order would include a cease and desist of any further work within the buffer. And it's my understanding all of the work is being done within the house. There's no external work.
Right, so that's my point. And so internal rehab is, we don't have a problem with, pending, as long as they're not stockpiling anything.
Right,
Yeah, within-
he'd have to make a point of not stockpiling anything inside the
Mhm.
buffer zone areas, right?
Yep, so I think that would be something you'd have to, as we're looking for well, we have this plan. What else are you looking for from the, would you be looking for, Janet, for the enforcement order in terms of, is there anything beyond this plan to at least note where any stockpiling would take place?
So, let's see, the 5 requirements in the enforcement order to be included in the notice of intent was at least a narrative as to why, when, and by whom the trees were removed. A revised site plan that includes the locations of all trees remaining on the property.
Mhm.
Does that include the wetland area?
No, no, that would not include a survey of existing trees in the wetland area, no.
Okay, thank you.
And then, a tree filter zone analysis. And then contacting Mike Angieri about chapter 159, our new stormwater bylaw. Ron is in the process there. And then identifying the location of the presumed vernal pool. And then Deb's submittal was not dated, and so just resubmitting that with a formal date on her submittal.
Okay,
Okay.
how do
And
we
I would-
handle the vernal pool delineation with a timing perspective?
I guess just label on the site plan, presumed vernal pool
Okay,
to be further delineated, something like that, just so it's at least called out that there's a vernal pool over there.
to be delineated, okay. Gotcha.
And would you want to add a stockpile area to the north of the driveway there?
Yeah,
In the
probably
area?
behind the house off that circle somewhere.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But but obviously in between the two wetland
Yeah,
buffers.
yeah. I'll have that flagged for him.
Oh, good, excellent. Visual aids are very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on the part of any parties? I will entertain a motion to issue an enforcement order per Janet's narrative,
So moved.
Second,
excuse me,
Sorry.
including a stockpiling location outside of the wetland buffer.
So moved.
Thank you.
second,
Thank you. Okay, Ron, you can take the plan down. Thanks.
Yep.
And let's see. Thank you. All in favor, Sarah? Yes. Anna? Amy?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Renee. Okay. Okay. Do stay in touch, Ron.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thanks guys for everything. Appreciate it.
Okay, next we have 90 Claybrook Road. We're back on the tree bandwagon. Janet, why don't you fill us in?
So, Jim had contacted me about, he had noticed some trees being removed on the property, asked me to swing by and take a look. That was on January 29th, which I did. I met, Tracy's here's the homeowner. I met her husband on site, and just explained why I was there. And I did see a number of trees that had been removed. Some appeared to have been in the wetland resource area itself, but all very close. The entire lot is surrounded by wetlands and there's floodplain. I issued my site inspection report. And then after I was on the site, I got the file from the office. And two things popped up. One was there had been a notice of intent back in 2013 for a new house. I think that there had been a tear down, a new house, new septic, new well. That was back in 2013, and then there was an amendment in 2014. So that original order of conditions, over 10 years old, they never got a certificate of compliance for that.
Mhm.
So that is one thing that should be followed up on. And then also there was a release, there was an above ground, I think it was an above ground oil tank, which had leaked. Into
Is
both,
that recently?
that was in 2013.
Okay.
I think it was at the time when Tracy purchased the property or soon after. So there was both soil and groundwater contamination. It did enter the DEP mass contingency plan. There was a response action plan submitted by a licensed site professional. Let's see. I don't recall. Oh, there was they estimated 210 gallons of number 2 fuel oil had been released from
Ouch.
above ground.
Wow.
Ooh,
February of 2013. There were a number of immediate response actions. And I think the other thing of concern is the groundwater level is so high there, it's within 1 foot of grade. So groundwater, after there was at least 50 cubic yards of impacted soil removed, but I think more. And then at least 3,000 gallons of impacted groundwater was dewatered and taken off site, all under oversight by the licensed site professional.
Mhm.
And then they received confirmation that they had removed all of the impacted soil, but a number of groundwater monitoring wells were required to make sure there was mitigation or continued release into the groundwater. So just this morning, we got a 300-page document from the licensed site professional, from Tracy, and I have not had a chance to review that. But it looks like at least the soil that the licensed site professional submitted to DEP, that all the contaminated soil had been removed, but I'm not sure what the monitoring wells situation was. So I'll take some more time and look through that. But regardless, so there was an original order of conditions, and then there were some changes to the house, and that was an amended order of conditions. And then for the immediate hazardous response action plan, they came in for an amended order of conditions. Now, really, that should have been its own order of conditions for the hazardous material removal work, but it got tagged on to the original order of conditions. So I think we're looking at two things. One is a certificate of compliance will need to come forward, and that will allow the commission to ensure that everything has been done properly. Mass DEP has signed off on the contamination issue. But the second issue are the trees. And it was my understanding that the homeowner's insurance were concerned about a number of trees on site, that they needed to be pruned or come down. And that will help explain, but they still should have come before the commission for a permit to remove the number of trees that they took down. So my suggestion is an enforcement order, as I laid out in my report, which is pretty standard enforcement order for tree removal, asking them to have the wetlands delineated, do an analysis or a tracking of all the trees, what were the size, where were they? And then once we have that information, the commission would decide whether restoration is needed and what type of restoration. And I know when this first went out, I think Amy had a question that it appeared perhaps some of the tree removals were off the owner's property. This property backs up to the Trout Brook 40B parcels that are completely undeveloped at this point. But that whole area is floodplain and very, very high water table. So it's a pretty sensitive area.
Mhm.
I was
So
just looking at, it's very difficult to tell without a survey.
Is this the house? It's interesting. Tracy, on Google Street View, it's blocked off. I don't know were you aware of that? Or
Oh,
did you
yes, I
inform-
did that on purpose for security reasons. A lot of women
Okay.
have started doing that. My apologies.
So is this have a stone face to it?
No, it's a colonial.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just, we have several houses similar with raised systems in the
Sure,
front.
it's on the
driveway,
corner of Trout Brook, and if you're facing Trout Brook, it's on the right-hand side.
Mhm,
There'll be a
mhm.
lot in front of mine and then mine. But Amy, just to help, no, I think they're all on my property. I would never want to cut a tree on somebody else's property, but
Oh,
we.
I wasn't
It's okay.
thinking
It's hard to
you
tell.
would want to, it
No,
might
no.
just be that you would
Yeah.
be, it was just looking at where your shed is and
Yes,
where the
the property line is.
property line is based
Yeah.
on the previous plan from some of the previous work.
Yes, yes, and we have
And
very
then the
similar
way
lots.
that
Mm.
Janet, it's probably the angle at which the pictures were taken or something, but anyway,
It could be.
that's
Yeah,
the
don't worry, and-
reason that it started, it's like,
Yeah,
but I, it's not, it's not, I wouldn't expect that
no.
you would intentionally take
no,
trees
no.
off somebody
I-
else's property. But
Right.
if you were told that you needed to take a tree down and you thought it was on your property, you might have done that by mistake. That's
Right.
that's the only
Yeah, no,
reason
that's
I
okay.
was
I
and
totally
that-
understand. And in the past,
not keen on that owner anyway, so
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
not trying to
no.
defend him.
And we, when we came to rebuild, so I actually bought the place, just to give a little history. I bought the property in 1996. There was a small home on it that I rented out for several years. And when this oil spill happened, it was when my tenant was here. So we weren't actually here. We weren't kind of monitoring anything. And one day they came and they delivered a full tank that leaked right out into the property. And the next 2 years of my life were an absolute financial nightmare, psychological nightmare. So we hired the best we could find, which was Nova, it was a company, an LSP company, Nova Armstrong. And they came in and they probably followed up to the tune of about $200,000, took everything out, got rid of it, put clean fill in, and then we had all the wells. And Janet, I was actually just looking at the map of those wells. I know that document was huge. I was scanning it today. They sent me this massive document. Thank God it's the same woman who handled it before that is still there, but she's retiring soon. So I'm trying to get all the information from her as quick as I can. And we did have the wells in, and what Nova Armstrong had done was they tested the wells, and some of them, the to the front right of the house near the neighbor's well to make sure that we didn't contaminate a neighbor's well. But the spill was actually to the back left of our property, where it is as far away from any of those neighbors' wells as can be, thank goodness. So she did a lot of water testing to make sure there was no petroleum in the water, and everything came out clear. Everything was sent to the DEP, and she closed it out and the DEP closed it out. So I'm pretty confident that everything is fine from over 10 years ago. However, when I talked to the LSP, I said, well, Janet is asking for the order of conditions. And is that something that was done? And she said, you know what? I'm not sure that that was done. So she told me she would help me with that, Janet, to get that done, hopefully before she retires, so since she knows the area. And yes, this was a horrible demand for my insurance company. I absolutely love trees. I put in an orchard in another town a couple of years ago. I have an entire Facebook page dedicated to my trees. So when we went out back, what we the guys we hired a local firm to take the trees down, and we went by each and every tree, and we decided in a very, the hardship kind of way what might need to come down and not. And there was also times that a tree was bifurcated in the back, and it's leaning towards my home with some big branches. And what we did, I would say to him, well, if we cut that branch, would it kill the tree? And sometimes he said yes. And I said, then don't cut the branch. And he did something called a bolt and cable. It was expensive, but we did it on 2 of the trees to really try to preserve them. And we actually only cut 2 in the back, and they were really leaning forward. The other thing we noticed is that on this lot, there's a couple of trees that I wanted to keep, but they have big wounds on the back of them. So when we bring in probably the wetland scientist, I'll just show him. So we cut some of the brush around the trees so we can monitor them to make sure. He thinks one of the larger trees, I'm actually facing it right now, it's kind of leaning into my house, but he thinks that it might be healing itself. So we didn't take down any trees that look like they could be preserved or healing themselves. So we actually took down very few. We took 2 to the left of the driveway. We took out back were the 2 that were falling in towards the house. And then to the right, there was one maple that had been dead, and it was actually had been large at one time, but the top had fallen off it. I think that was still out there on the brush. And then we noticed, I think if it hadn't been for me calling in these tree guys, we wouldn't have noticed the second half of the bifurcated trunk had just missed our AC unit. It had completely fallen towards the house. So even though that was dead, we did cut that to the ground. So I'll have them look at all the trees that were taken out, and I love trees, so I'm happy to plant more of those out there.
So Tracy, how many trees in total then? 5?
I
4?
think there was
No, I'm seeing more than that.
there was about 5 or 6 saplings, or what I would call saplings, but I'm not sure if you're going to term them as saplings. 2 in the backyard, and I think 5 otherwise. And actually my bill has that. I can send you guys my bill of what they delineated and what they cut.
Okay.
So we took
Okay,
down
so-
absolutely as few as
Okay.
possible.
So so there's 2 parts here. One is the trees.
Yeah.
And you're clearly looking at from the Google view from above, you are surrounded by trees.
Yes,
Um,
yeah.
We also see, this is actually the picture I thought when we were talking about the previous hearing. It's clear that here you have some maples that were diseased. This is all can go into that.
Right.
I think Janet's recommendation relative to the enforcement order is perfectly appropriate there.
Yes.
Janet, were you requiring another NOI? I'm just trying to review through this fast enough.
I think in this case, because it was limited tree removal, that just a straight enforcement order.
Okay, I agree. And the other thing on the oil with the LSP, so did they submit a final resolution? Do you know if that was one of the last documents in there? There's a final resolution.
Final
to DEP?
resolution. I can look for that. I know that, when I was talking to her the last couple of days to tell her what was going on, she said that she felt like it had been done. I mean, definitely it sounds like they missed this order of conditions part of it, but she said as far as the DEP, it looked so good that they haven't even gone back to, she said sometimes the DEP will go back and will audit things a couple years later to make sure stuff is done. And she said mine was so under the radar because the cleanup had been so extensive and the
Mhm.
water had been so healthy that they hadn't even opened an audit for that. So
Janet, was there something as you reviewed the DEP record that made you think that it hadn't been closed out?
So I just went by what was in our file.
Oh,
there-
our file. So you didn't go to the DEP
Mm.
oil spill
There
file
may-
or anything like that?
Information, but you know,
Pardon?
whatever. The file was missing a lot of information that should have been submitted by the LSP
Uh-huh.
over the course of the remediation.
Mhm.
But as long as we have a final report and if the LSP can summarize that report and reference wherever, so I don't have to read the 300 pages.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a long
No,
one.
and the way
Yeah.
the way these things normally do work for oil spills is that the monitoring wells, the farther they are away from the house, they're looking at parts per billion. And then actually, since this was 10 years ago, if they've gotten to a light enough number, they know that bacteria get involved and they basically eat the hydrocarbons. So I would not expect that after 10 years to be much of an issue there if they cleaned out things as you mentioned.
Mhm.
But we do need that final
Okay.
report from the
Okay,
LSP.
no worries. Great.
Um,
And Janet, if I know that she sent me the file number, I can send it to you again. I literally clicked on it and got right to the case in the DEP site. I think it's in one of my emails, but I can resend that to you.
mhm.
And if you ever want to speak with her, she said she would be happy to talk to you because I know me interpreting between the two of you probably isn't the best thing. It's sometimes it's, you know, if you want to talk to her, you would know more about her work. So
Okay. Okay, so what we're looking at then is the enforcement order as outlined from Janet. And then which would include I don't know if it's noted here, but I would recommend that it include the final response action note for the oil spill from 10 years ago,
okay.
in addition to the other aspects that are noted there. Okay.
Great.
Janet, as your draft enforcement order, then are you okay with the commission voting on that?
Yes, so it requires two things, a wetland delineation and identify of all trees removed by April 2nd, with a number of additional information, and then also the submittal of a COC request.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Okay, thank
great,
you.
thank you. I will entertain a motion for that. You can just say so moved.
Sure,
since
so
Janet
moved.
outlined it. Okay,
Second.
thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Tracy. Everyone, let's see, Tim,
Aye.
Amy,
Hi.
Anna.
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay. Let's see. I think that's it for folks in front of us this evening. And then we're looking next on our agenda. Unless is there anything else, Janet? We've covered all the folks on our agenda.
That's right.
Okay. And then next we're looking at approving minutes from September 27th and October 11th and October 25th, all of 2023. Janet sent some highlighted clarifications. I'd entertain a motion. Number one, anybody have any comments to add?
There were a couple, at least in one of them, there were a couple of places where we need to discuss what the appropriate wording should be. Is that correct, Janet?
That's correct.
Okay, and
I
so
know
let's
for
start.
sure it's on. I lost it. My computer crashed, so I lost a bunch of things that were open.
Our
And I left it
condolences.
open so that I would remember. But so maybe Janet, you could
Yeah.
walk us through the questionable phrases that you wanted discussed.
So we can start with the September 27th, 2020.
Mhm.
So on
Okay,
my comments, you know, in a couple of these, this one, anything to do with Miller Hill, they were just really long minutes, but there was a lot of important acknowledgements in them. And so the first is at the bottom of page 1 of those minutes. That there was a sentence, and we were talking about the amount of disturbance at the different properties. And then there's a sentence, commission members did not express concern for exercising oversight for this parcel. And that was like a red flag. My suggestion is we just delete that sentence.
I agree, because that's something that evolved as a request from those parties. So I'm fine with deleting that.
Okay. Okay, let's see. And I think that was it for that month. And again, you know, my focus was just to,
I think there was something later on as well. No?
I know in another set of minutes, there were several.
Maybe I'm not in the,
Let's see, I just have a single page of revisions for that Janet had sent out.
Yeah, I did not see anything else that needed the commission's feedback. I did,
Okay.
under attendees, I did think there were several attendees that were not listed. I don't know how important the commission feels that is, but like Sam Solderholm, Ken Solderholm, Greg McGregor, some of the other attorneys. So I don't know, Lori, if you might have time to go back, and I don't know if you keep track of who was in attendance or not.
I do, and I did already add those in for the final document.
Okay, great. Given those changes and additions, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
Move to
as
accept the
revised.
minutes as amended.
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Tim,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Amy,
hi,
Anna?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Okey-doke. Excellent. Let's see, moving on to, let me pull it up here. The October 11th. Whoops, wrong one.
Okay, let's see, October 11th. Yes, there were a couple areas on the second page. This was discussion again of 12 Miller Hill. And there was a statement about commitments and deadlines. And the sentence was, Concom is looking for stabilization on commitments. So I don't even know what that means, so I
What
would.
that means.
Commitments on
Yeah.
stabilization?
Commitments on stabilization.
That sounds more likely. Makes more
Where
sense
is
anyway.
that? Roughly what page, Janet?
And in my revisions, it was on page 2, towards the top. It was discussion of jurisdiction, and
Right, for the 100-foot buffer on all 3 properties.
Based on the sentence prior in the unedited ones, attorneys agreed to a 4 to 6 week submittal with 90-day completion. It sounds like we're looking for them to be concrete about when they're gonna give us stuff.
Mm-hmm.
which I
We
do remember
were.
was a problem at that point. We were all kind of fuzzy.
Well, but I think that's when we kind of laid it down and said,
Yeah.
you know, especially because above that, that was also a key meeting where we had Vincent Montemajori accept full responsibility. So once we had a responsible party, then everything else could fold from there. And
So,
then
so how about if we take the words for stabilization and replace them with firm? For
I'm
stabilization,
still
Yeah.
missing.
looking
I have
for
not. I'm
firm
still missing.
commitments.
I don't see where it says stabilization. If somebody could help me.
Attorneys agreed on 4 to 6 weeks submittal. Right below
Oh,
that
with a
is
90-degree completion.
yeah,
not-
right.
90-day completion of the restoration plan.
And then the next sentence is Concom is looking for stabilization on commitments.
Oh,
So it's either
That-
means commitments on stabilization, which I don't think it means. I think it means
no, I think it was.
firm commitments.
Yeah.
Yes, is yes, exactly. Is looking for. So let's have a good synonym here.
Firm.
Looking for firm commitments from all parties.
On above, I would say.
Yeah, okay.
What they
So looking
agreed
for,
to is the submittal, blah, 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 and then you want looking for firm commitments.
so looking for
I don't know.
agreement to the above.
Well, you're looking for, I think what we were probably emphasizing was that we really want that want a date, you know, firm date that this will be done by.
Mhm,
Not 4 to
mhm.
6 weeks, but you know,
Well, why don't we just say is looking for a firm date for submission?
yeah, firm, yeah, okay, fine.
Okay, why don't we change it to that? So it's interesting. And one thing we have,
Then we don't talk about any firm dates.
well, we made a reference to it 90 day. We may on the next set of minutes. We got everyone to agree to a 4 to 6 week submittal with a 90-day completion of the restoration plan, which that was a pipe dream because obviously it was a much more involved situation that took more than 90 days. But we can keep that in there if that's what we said. I recall us saying we wanted a submission, you know, within 4 to 6 weeks once people had agreed to things. I'm finding it curious that at the top of the page, Mr. Montemajori for 14 Miller Hill is saying he accepted responsibility for removals at 14 and 22. That's true because it went be a little bit beyond him. And then and then Francois Mallet, full responsibility for the restoration so that follows. That clarifies both owners. So it's a redundancy.
Maybe it would make most sense just to get rid of that sentence.
Which one?
Concom is looking for stabilization on commitment.
Yeah, I think
it.
so. Yeah, I think we can get rid of. Not only that,
since we don't know what it really means.
Yeah, and I think at the top we have some redundancy there, which with Montemajori, because he also did a few paragraphs down after Francois Mallet accepts his full responsibility, then it says Mr. Montemajori accepted responsibility. And so that's so we
Yeah, it is,
I think
but I just left it in, I think, because I was getting tired.
yeah, well, it also may have been stated twice. I wouldn't be, you know, because there's a lot of stuff floating around. We can keep that in. Let's see.
And
then I'm not sure Agent Bowser confirmed for the record. That all seems, you know, struck through and so forth, and that's the third redundancy for Mr. Montemajori. And I don't think that's clarifying at all. So
Okay.
I would recommend we take that out.
And then there's a paragraph under that.
Yes, that's the
That is a little concerning.
Yeah, so I would say that I view that more, attorneys argue that Concom should,
Seed, I think, is the word.
supervise, or not exceed, expand their jurisdiction. No, actually, the attorneys for 3638 requested that the Concom should expand their jurisdiction into the upland portions. Is what I recall. Do people recall it the same way? I didn't hear anything
But then
till I
we
saw it.
Like a
but then
lifetime
we
ago.
declined to do that.
No, well, I think we were still, this is all part of the evolution. So they said, look, we want to have this enforced properly. And there's stuff that's outside of your jurisdiction, but we'd like you to be involved in that in order to make this thing move smoother. And so I think this is the first time they've requested that, because we finally had people admitting that they had done this. And so I think we may have declined it initially. I don't know. As we move forward, I'm hoping that the following meeting might have been the meeting when we determined that we would go ahead and do that. But the way this is written from
Well,
Dale, the
Maybe we
person
should check the next meeting to make
Yeah,
sure that we
I would-
actually
yeah, let me just pull that
accepted
up.
the responsibility for the upland portions, because obviously we did.
Yeah, so let me just see if I've just pulled it up. I'm taking a quick glance at that.
No, so the next meeting was a very short discussion.
I'm seeing that, yeah, because I'm not even I haven't found it yet. I found everyone else in that.
So it alludes to, so there'll be 2 enforcement orders to include responsibility for a restoration plan. So you didn't come out and say to include upland or outside the buffer, but it was restoration for all of the properties where there was tree removal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Interesting.
That wasn't restated at the meeting, but that would have been in the enforcement order that you approved.
Yeah, so I think we actually said that we would do the upland portion
We did.
at that,
At the
on the 11th.
On the 11th, or on the 25th.
Don't you? Because if you look at the 25th, it's 2 amended enforcement orders to include responsibility for a restoration plan for 3638.
But that doesn't spell out that it was for the uplands as well. So let me go back to the other one. I mean, so far it seems like this, will not be coming up to us in terms of litigation. However, it may be that we need the following one to these to actually see what we said. And Lori, that you just sent out, is that right?
That would be November, the beginning of
Yeah.
November.
I just sent out November 8th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't we, because this is that was a crucial sort of breakthrough there. Why don't we hold off on approving these and have everybody be, since that just went out today, why don't we have everyone review that, so the next time we'll be familiar with this, and we can and then we can move forward on that. Does that make sense to folks? Because I don't want us to say that we said something where it turned out we didn't.
November
we know-
8th doesn't have in it.
Oh, so maybe they didn't say anything at that point. Let me go back to,
Yeah, I think October 25th, the commission approved the amended enforcement orders, so that would
Yeah.
have sort of been the end of that discussion.
Well,
Well,
Janet, did the enforcement orders had the upland portion in them, didn't they?
That's right, because they referenced
Yes.
at the time, yeah.
so let me see how the wording is on that then.
I think this last statement was us accepting that we would be okay including the upland portion in the same restoration plan. It totally, I mean, the trustees said we should just do it that way because then it would be a coherent plan. If you do two separate plans, one for the wetlands buffer and one for the upland, then you can end up with
And the main thing is that there
Goodbye.
was no opposition to our doing that by any of the property owners. I mean,
Well, I think part of the thing, so I would say that attorneys requested that Concom should expand their jurisdiction to include restoration of upland portions. I think, how's that sound to folks?
Okay.
and Lori, are you getting these changes or
Can you just repeat that last one, John?
Okay, so attorneys
No,
requested.
no, wait a minute. We're back on the 10-11 ones, right?
Correct.
And
Yep.
you're at the
We're in capital letters in red. It says
second, okay, attorneys for 3638 suggested that Concom should expand their jurisdiction. That was from the previous, what you talked about before. Are we starting
Right,
from the
so-
beginning again?
So attorneys for, well, I think your clarification is very good. Attorneys for and outlining the lots there requested that Concom should
You said expand instead of.
expand their
exceed.
jurisdiction. And what was the word that you had down? You said
Me?
instead of expand, you had what?
No, someone had said expand instead of
Yeah, so-
their jurisdiction for that
Right,
first.
so, yeah, so I don't know, because I don't
Instead
think
of a
exceed,
seed,
exceed is almost an antonym for that. So I think yeah, that we should expand their jurisdiction
Mm-hmm.
to, not in, to the restoration of upland portions.
Mm-hmm. And allow a SERP uplands expert.
Mm,
Yeah, and allow a SERP uplands expert to do
Okay.
what?
And
on
how
that,
about the
yeah.
next sentence?
I
exceed does mean comply.
I don't, well,
Consent.
number one, we didn't, exceeding is the wrong word. So
Yes.
there was a point where we pushed back and we
Yeah.
said no. And then at some point, which we don't see in the following two, we agreed to move forward on that. So
Well,
either, go
Do
ahead.
you want to change decline to accede to like consider?
Yeah, well, how about the commission reserve judgment
Okay.
on expanding jurisdiction, but is willing to hear and so forth. And I think when we get to the following ones, we can at that point say that it was determined that the board would the commission would agree to roll uplands and buffer into their jurisdiction.
it must be when we review the amended EOs
Yeah, I think you're right there.
that we agreed. And accede does mean expand. Assent, comply,
Yeah,
allow.
I just think it's an awkward
It's
word
a-
choice.
It's a
It's a formal word.
SATs.
It is, but it's
Word.
pseudo legal. Yeah, I'm not sure if it
Yeah.
really follows legally. So, let's see. Interesting though. So And then, so then it says after that action is that Agent Bowser will revise the amended EO into 2 EOs. So it would seem that somewhere at that point between, right before that action, we may have agreed at that point. So this may be saying that there was pushback, but it doesn't actually say we then agreed to it. And that's my only, it's trying to figure out when that pivot point happened. Anybody?
Well, having
So,
had to do with the 2 different property owners accepting responsibility.
right, that was the first part of it. And so then was the idea is that you were going to have, that's true, because our jurisdiction in terms of enforcement orders wouldn't necessarily go to Uplands. So we had 2 separate EOs one for each property owner.
Right.
Is that okay? Okay, I see that. Yeah. Okay. So given that wording choice, is there anything else that anybody thinks should be revised beyond Janet's revisions for the balance of the of those minutes?
Good to me.
No, I thought the rest of
Mhm.
the comments were fine.
Great. Then thank you everybody for actually reviewing these as well. Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of October 11th, 2023.
Sure. Move
As
to accept the
revised.
minutes of 10/11/23 as revised.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. All in favor? Tim?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Anna?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okie doke. Okay. Then, does that leave anything dangling relative to that for 10/25? So that's there where Janet put in regarding the additional attendees, and Lori, you had also reviewed that. So adding Soderholm McGregor to this as well.
Yes, I do. I write an attendance sheet at the beginning of the meeting with all the participants as they're listed,
Okay.
and maybe she doesn't have that available to her. I don't know.
Which is interesting because so does obviously you see them on if somebody's reviewing something on the Zoom that
I don't know that she
it's
necessarily sees a whole list of people though, and I always write that down.
okay, great. So you've made those revisions.
Right.
Okay. And let me think. And that was a pretty quick one on that. What do we have on that?
So there were 2 things on the 3rd page towards the top. And this has to do with the Pulte Homes Junction Street
Okay.
rep. So the 2nd paragraph, there was quite a bit of give and take. The neighbors were pushing. They wanted more involvement in being able to review, like Paul's peer review.
Yeah.
And so the sentence is, the 2nd paragraph, if a notice of intent is issued, Concom will, so there was an issue about the intermittent stream, which was within the BVW. And there was a concern that the stream did not show up on the ANRAD, only the BVW did. But I don't think, and I think that the commission decided the ANRAD just needed to show the BVW. But my memory, so this was like a year and a half ago, so.
Right. So I don't, if a notice of intent is issued, which we weren't, okay, so that would be after the fact, because we haven't even at that point hadn't accepted the NRAD. So do you think Dale, who's writing this down, is saying that this was a question that came from a neighbor?
Yeah, yes. Yes, in reviewing Ecotech's final approval. I think it was one of the abutters or neighbors.
And then that you clarified that it does not determine the boundaries of any resource area, which I recall. And so we're only looking at the BVWs on that. So yeah, I would say a resident asked if that if a notice of intent is issued, would Concom investigate the presence of a stream further? Do you think would you think was the nature of that question?
Yes, that sounds like that fits.
Okay,
Why
then
would
why
it
don't we,
matter?
what's that?
Why would it matter if it's in a BVW?
Well, they were just basically, I remember one of the neighbors had, they had an attorney involved and they were trying to say, well, if you're rushing this ORAD, and so that if you do a notice of intent, would you go ahead and investigate more tightly into whether there was a stream there? And Janet basically was saying that the ORAD doesn't address that, and it would address, in essence, would address that as if as we normally do, so they would still have to come in with a notice of intent, and would we go ahead and look at it? You know, each notice, each application for notice of intent differently than the ORAD.
But if they have an ORAD, we wouldn't be questioning their wetlands delineations, would we? I thought that was the whole point of an ORAD.
Well, I didn't, so then Janet, does the paragraph after that, which which embodies your clarification, is that correct? Is that something that you would have said, or
I think so. I mean, at
Am I
this,
just not understanding an ORAD?
well, at this point, we had, had been quite a bit of back and forth between Paul and Rich Kirby at LEC. Because there was bylaw resource areas and then state.
Right.
And I remember them coming back and saying, oh, the stream channel is not being shown, but is that really relevant? And I guess the point was, it's really not relevant as long as, like Paul had determined, the BVW associated with the stream. Like the stream itself would have been important if there was no BVW.
That's what I mean, yeah.
right? And when also, if it was a channel, it would obviously be intermittent as opposed to perennial.
Right.
And then yeah, and it was because that was a question in trying to say that if there wasn't a stream there, then you couldn't have BVW. And that went around the round circle. So I think the let's see. I think what I mentioned earlier, a resident asked that if a notice of intent is, and I don't think it was if a notice of intent, if a notice of intent is submitted, would Concom investigate this further? So,
Well,
does that make sense? I remember there being some confusion with the residents, but in that's what the gist of what I recall. They were saying, okay, you're going to do this ORAD, but if something else comes to light when they come up with their notice of intent, will you, if you have new data, will you review that?
No, we're stupid. We wouldn't do
Yeah,
What's that?
By the ORAD.
that. I'm just
Right, and then
it's
Janet
stupid.
was saying, no, we have the ORAD, we're gonna accept what we have for the ORAD. So what I'm saying, so that's what they asked, and Janet's response was that we're only rendering the decision based on what's submitted on that ANRAD. I think we don't have to go into anything beyond that. I think we just or we can just take that. Well, no, I think if why don't we make note that a resident asked if a notice of intent is submitted, would the Concom investigate further?
Right, and then that word should be submitted, not issued.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then I think the next paragraph flows just like we've seen Janet's thought process flow relative to that. The only, yeah. Mm-hmm. And now the next one down, the neighbors request a thorough review of the ORAD grant due to inconsistencies in the town bylaw. So I think that they did. They wanted us to just make sure that this was not being rushed, and that I think that can be, I think that can stand on its own, that neighbors did indeed request that.
And I would
Yeah.
change grant to delineation, the ORAD delineation.
So neighbors request a thorough review of the ORAD delineation. I could see the neighbors using the word grant, because they're not going to be, you know, and this is really supposed to be a review of what somebody asked. So I don't have a problem with that.
But I'm also not sure what they're referring to, inconsistencies in the town bylaw, due to perceived inconsistencies, or?
No, I think the question there was because they were discussing state versus town, our bylaws, that many of the residents were confused as to what, when you switched from one to the other. They didn't see it as and the question was also that they were not asking for a 40B, they weren't looking for waivers, but that some of that had come up. So I think due to neighbors request a thorough review of the ORAD grant due to perceived inconsistencies between state regulations and the town bylaw. How does that track?
That sounds good.
Okay. Are you getting that, Lori? Thank you. Okay. Yep. So then the next sentence, that was the confusion we had anyway. And did anyone have any other questions relative to this particular?
Right there.
I think that was one.
Let's see.
That was all I noticed, but I read this one pretty fast.
Yeah. No, I think that, I mean, there's some exposition about Gretchen's thing from Janet's perspective. I think it's fine to have it in there. I think it was also not critical to, but I think it's, in hindsight, it's good to have it there. Okay, I'm just flipping through a few other things here. Okay. Any other comments on this? Okay, I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes for 10/25/23 as revised.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. All in favor, Tim,
Aye.
Sarah,
aye.
Amy,
Bye.
Anna.
Aye.
Great, and I'm an aye. Okay. Okay, then we're looking for a land management update.
Yep. So let's see, we met on Friday last week. Fridays happen to work great, so I think we're shifting to Friday. We talked about follow up from the discussion in December with around finding signage or getting signs made to inform everyone about rights of way. So I'm going to be looking into that. Talked a little bit about updating GIS information, which is a project of Greg's. Sounds like there might be a volunteer who's interested in that. So we're going to see if we can talk to them and then maybe see if they want to join us. Obviously come and talk about that first. Let's see what else. We planned some regular trail work days. February 22nd is the first one we're planning for, with the idea being that if the weather is not super cold and snowy, we'll go out and hang some more signs. Continuing on the Blue Trail from Snow's Hill. And let's see. We talked about a trail conflict at 139 Center, which I think everyone got emailed about. Erosion control was too close to the trail, and I think that's being sorted. And then we talked about the Springdale Meadow project. So we were going to have a site visit, but got canceled for weather and schedules. But Bill was hesitant about putting a real draft in front of us before we'd met. But at the same time, it's February and there's going to be bad weather. So Janet was suggesting that maybe we should have him come in with his draft as is. Since we know these two particular areas need better weather before we can sort them, let's talk about what we do know and then maybe start, bringing the draft to other stakeholders so we don't get, stuck waiting for good weather in winter. Janet, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's it. So I think the idea was to have him come to our next meeting on the 26th, which I think is going to be relatively light, a permitting agenda. Talk more about the plan, and he'll send that out before the meeting, if that sounds good.
Great. Thank you. Oh, and interesting. So both Amy and I went to the Forest and Trails shindig in Sherburne.
Oh yeah, how was it?
And it was lovely.
it's fun.
It was
I've always
Yeah.
loved that party.
yeah.
Great party.
And
Always a
So-
great party.
yeah.
Well,
And of course,
when we have a nice community center, we can have one too.
I know what a
Oh, yeah,
concept.
that's a great idea.
We may not have the echoes that old style town hall rooms like that have. So we'll but we and I talked to a number of their members, and I hope to get back to I hope to get back to their chair just to see how they deal with recruiting. Because they had a great turnout. I mean, over 100 people, wouldn't you think, Amy? Yeah. And yeah, it would be nice if we could marshal
Sold
something like
out.
that. It sold out. And not only that, they actively work with mountain bikers. And they've made it clear to people who are confused about that, because they said that the mountain bikers provide 90% of their trail maintenance. And
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
yeah. And many of them are trained for it through New England Mountain Bike Association and stuff. So there's certainly some resources to learn from there. So we'll continue to follow up with that. Also, I don't know if anybody saw on the Dover I guess it's I can't recall if it was the informal Dover Facebook or the town Dover Facebook, but something was posted about Conservation Commission members, looking for those. Janet, I just wanted to let you know, I'm going to talk to Chris. I think people interested in that probably should formally run through Lori in the office, as opposed to people calling you directly. That way we have an official imprimatur on that. So I'll talk to Chris about just changing that one little detail. But it was great to see it up, and thank you for putting it together and working with them on that. And now,
Someone interested?
I think we're talking
Lori
about
mentioned.
Maureen Carey. I think she's on the
Yeah. Okay.
further down.
and was that the one you gotten a resume from, Lori?
Yes, and I had sent it out to you all. I thought maybe she might zoom in tonight, but maybe she couldn't make it.
Okay.
I've
Okay,
been
and-
with sustainability, I've been trying to just schedule phone calls with people for like 15 minutes. It's making a huge difference. I don't mind, emailing her and asking, hey, do you want to talk to a human? I'm sure she talked to you, but maybe someone else. I don't know.
Yeah, for
I
open
think-
space, I would have coffee in person with everybody who was interested. Trying to recruit
Well, I
them.
think starting with a phone call is great. I think that's a great idea, and because you've been, hands-on for trail maintenance, and you can spread your enthusiasm. So no, I think if you I think, is the phone number on the resume? Does anyone recall? If not, you can
Should
I'm
be.
sure you can get it.
Let me-
Yeah. You should be able to get it from
Or send
Lori.
her an email.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. that's
Yeah.
good.
No, it's a great idea. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, next up is Janet's invoice, which is a little bit more than the previous months. Janet, what was it? Is there a quick précis of what changed last month versus the previous months? Was it particular
Well,
any particular properties or?
well, we seem to have a run on enforcement situations. Enforcement situations that are, the deadlines are not being met. And so
Mhm.
going on and on. Also, 88 Pine Street, a filing by Cheney. They're just not good filings and they take a lot of my time and effort. It's very frustrating.
Which, yeah, we
And
spoke about at the end of the last
all the
meeting.
minutes.
Yes, and the minutes,
Oh, right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
all those combined, that makes, yeah.
Important minutes, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of, well, so we'll move on to something else, but first, so I'll entertain a motion to accept Janet's invoice and
So moved.
authorize payment.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Tim,
Hi.
Sarah,
Aye.
Anna?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Okay, great. And speaking of minutes, Lori, well, Lori, why don't you fill folks in terms of your document request you've just received? Or do you want me to?
I don't know, it's not on the agenda and I didn't know if
Well, then I'll
something
bring it up.
that should,
I'll incorporate it just to, we have a document request from somebody because when we've had these complicated things for minutes, and on this one we were covered. This was regarding the last issue that we dealt with I can't remember what Pat Corrigan's company name was for that process, but the crossing, the stream crossing there. And as you if you remember, that got negated by the person who bought his house. There was a legal action going on between the two of them, and that has it crossed my mind a few weeks ago, wondering hit on I don't know, was it Friday or Monday, Lori, where the folks who bought that house are requesting documentation from the town on anything to deal with Haven Terrace there. So Lori is going to need to scan virtually everything on that, and we are pulling together a pile of what that physically looks like, and we'll be going to the town to see if we can get some administrative help on that, because that would be a short-term, full-time job for somebody. So that's why it's always a good thing, and we were up to date on those minutes, so I'm glad. And we were pretty good at having, substantial minutes. So when we encounter these sorts of detailed issues, it's good for us to have those. So I just wanted to bring that up to folks. And Lori and I will be talking to town management to see if we can get some help on that. Let's see. And then
I
update. Go ahead.
just wanted to mention, under the FOIA law, I believe you can charge a reasonable amount.
They've their attorneys, as far as I understand, they've already
that's what I was gonna bring that up too.
they volunteered. I guess they're familiar with that, so they're expecting to pay for that. Not that we would get the money, as the as Conservation Commission, but
And it doesn't add any more time to do it either, it's just.
right. It does not expand the 7 days a week that we currently have. So, and that's the big problem. It's just it would take Lori's working her full allotment of hours, and the idea of having to then something has to give somewhere.
Right,
And so we're
but
gonna see
if we can, if we can hire a temp to do
Mhm.
that, then
That's what we're gonna, we're gonna look into that. So.
great.
Let's see, updates from the previous meeting. Let's see, Lori, have you heard from, oh no, actually, so 29 Saddle Ridge. It turns out that did you receive the check from Varden? Is that right, Lori?
Yes. The invoice was paid. The
Okay.
outstanding invoice was paid, but nothing new has come in, and that letter didn't go out. You and I had talked about it, and I thought that the deadline was set. Wasn't it set to,
To spring sometime. No,
yeah, so
just
you
to
said
bring.
there's no rush with that one, get the other ones out, so
Yeah,
that's
so as we
done
did,
out now.
as we discussed one of the, as we reviewed things, Laura and I, the, Vadran, except for the slow payment, and apparently he'd sent the check out to the town, didn't note on the check what it was for, and the accountant didn't know what to do with it, and so Laura got in touch with him. He sent out a replacement check, so he's up to date on that. Relative to his submission, we had actually told him that we wanted it submitted by sometime in April, so he's actually within the time frame that we had set for him. So he's working on that, but he's in the clear. Everything is up to date as far as we're concerned. On 31 Springdale, we went over that, and I also, Amy, you'd sent out the letter, his late letter he had sent to DLCT.
Well,
So
we sent him a letter that Stephen sent him an email that said, you're in violation, we hear you're encroaching on us. And he sent back a nice note, but still hasn't done, that was
so he sent the
on
note
New
out in
Year's Eve.
January. Yeah, so and it is interesting because I'd walked that property with him early on, and he mentioned in that letter that he thought he was okay because he just pulled down a bunch of raised garden beds that the previous owner had. Looking at Google Earth, it's not clear to me, we need his plan in front of us to show exactly where all these things were. So he can, he's mentioned, that he basically spruced the area up. He maintains he didn't cut any trees, and we need that letter from Goddard paying attention to that side of things. I think they've been paying attention to other things, but not to that. So that will have to be revised. Lori, did we send that letter out, or were you waiting for me
Right,
to?
that letter did go out. That went out the end of January,
Mhm.
certified, I believe, and also email. And I think you all might have gotten a copy of that one when I sent it out. And I haven't heard anything back. I also attached the Ecotech peer review estimate and requested a check.
Mhm.
And,
So I
haven't
will,
gotten that either.
and then I got Amy's letter, and so with all that combined, I'll be calling him within the next 7 days or so, and drive that through, but also note that he needs to expand Goddard's delineations over to that side, so that they look up they look at any potential tree cutting and things of that nature noted on the plan.
Well, I mean, Paul noted and Stephen both noted that there's a significant wetlands filling over there as well. So that's
Yeah,
get
it's
remediated.
interesting. Looking at Google Earth, I didn't see, and that's why I want Goddard to pay closer attention to that. It may be that predated his purchase for looking
Well, it
at,
doesn't matter if it predated his purchase, John, if it was filled.
I understand that, which is why if Goddard isn't instructed to look for it, they're going to view it as being as existing. So with the information
Right,
that
but
Stephen
Paul
mentioned.
noted that it was not that it was filled, so.
Mhm. So that's part of the letter that went out
And
from
Goddard
Lori.
was on the walk with Paul,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, and then Paul had to come back to them and say, you're being a little light on your on your plantings, and that was incorporating some of that area over there. I just think that the letter from Stephen probably should be used to clarify and make sure that they address that. They
Yeah,
should
no,
be able to.
we would, I mean, DLCT would like bounds put in so that this doesn't happen again.
I think that, yeah, and it may be, and it may be in fact that it did predate him. However, his property line is property line, and I think no matter, we're expecting for them to put bounds in once we get this all resolved regardless, because it's clear that they need them. So I will be bringing those things up to him, and also asking him why we haven't received the check yet. So I'll update you at the next meeting.
Janet has her hand up.
Yep, Janet?
So just to clarify on this, so back over a year, when Jim first called that things were happening there, Jim and I went out to the site. I documented everything. There was new fill, pretty much including the drainage ditch stream, and also on the side of the property and on the right side. So all of that is in my inspection report.
Oh, okay, okay, oh, good. So
We issued,
there was new fill on the left side?
absolutely.
Okay,
Probably, I think I even gave an estimate in my report. And so you issued an enforcement order, you have to do a delineation, come up with a restoration plan. And then we also issued an amended enforcement order after Paul and I went out and met with Goddard and Will Mitchell all on site. So, and it was very clear, things were moving ahead. Paul and I came back and said, okay, your restoration plan is lacking. This is what you have to do. There were like 12 items. And then the most recent deadline for that was January 3rd. I mean, we were very generous with them. So they do have a restoration plan before us, but it's inadequate. And so they need to wrap that up and then get that to us so we can review it again and approve it.
do you recall, Janet, on that plan, does it make reference to I know it made reference to the trench that was filled in? Does it make reference to fill on the left and right side of things? Do you
Yes.
recall?
Paul even did GIS coordinates out there with, yes, that was
Oh.
all really well documented. There was a lot of fill on the left side.
Really? 'Cause
Yes.
yeah, maybe I was looking at an older, the GPS hadn't caught up with it.
I'd say 20 square feet or more.
20 square feet?
Yes.
That's not that much in terms of fill, but,
It's steep though. It's not
oh, I see. So it went over the, whatever,
not
that
cubic
area
feet, not
probably,
20 cubic feet, 20 square feet.
yeah,
And then it goes down several feet.
Right.
okay.
But it
So,
virtually on top of the wetland line over there.
okay.
Well, how do you know where the wetland line if it's underneath fill?
Wow.
Well, so I'm curious, there had been a septic system submission to us, 8 or 9 years ago, that should have some of that delineation on it. So, I'll bring that up to Paul to see if he can compare the two. And that way there should be some grading there. So we'll, and I'm just putting a note to myself for that.
I just don't know why. I mean, they were just very close to finalizing that for the commission's and Paul's review. But then, so a month and a half has gone by.
Yeah, I think at one point there was, I talked to somebody at Goddard, and there was, musical chairs for people being sick, and I think somebody went out with a birth, and those were the excuses we were getting. But at this point they should have caught up on that. So we'll push to get that moving further forward faster. So let me
Don't
just
forget the bounds.
well, I think
Otherwise,
the
somebody
bound
keep putting a
no, the
fence in your
bound situation is
wetlands,
the
Janet.
bound situation is that's a given. I mean, there's no question.
Yeah.
We
Thank you.
we
It's
do that.
just you know, I don't want to be putting a fence up in wetlands, but I'm gonna put a fence up in wetlands if
Well,
I
I was
to
wondering,
prove where the property line is.
well, I was trying to figure out that because as I was looking at Google Maps or Google Earth and looking at the extent of what he had done to the left of his driveway, which we gave him permission for relative to the fence. But my assumption was that that was based on a plan that he had submitted to us. And it was tough to tell whether or not he was, with the angles and so forth, he's very close. And I think we want to
I
get
don't-
all that noted.
I don't think, it's not right up by the road, it's farther back that
Right.
he's,
I understand, but it also looked like he had moved the shed. There were two sheds there. He'd moved, and I think his assumption all along was that they were on his property. They may have been a little bit over on the front, and the one in the back probably was not on his property, but we'll find out, and we'll just make it clear that we need them to address those concerns in their submission.
And thing actually is he still has an RDA before us that he was supposed to revise. Remember, he said, oh, can I at least put my stone wall up and do these other things? And you were very kind and understanding, but with the condition that he was supposed to get a revised RDA to us.
So was that so that right-hand part of where he was no longer putting the driveway in, and he had the stone piers, and he was supposed to put a fence across that? Is that part of what you're talking about?
Because his current RDA shows a circular drive still, and
Okay.
we're not going to.
Mhm.
But he hasn't gotten that revised RDA to us for your approval.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can that be rolled over into his NOI?
You know, we did not request an NOI because we would not have
Oh,
permitted.
so that's right. This is all enforcement and RDA.
Right.
Okay, got it.
so
Okay.
if I look at just Mass GIS, which of course isn't Mass Mapper, which isn't perfect on the property lines,
Mm-hmm.
but it looks like the fence that he put in just near the road actually does intrude into
That's,
real
yeah,
land.
and that's even switching over to satellite view and Mass Mapper. But the point is, unfortunately, Mass Mapper doesn't, that's plus or minus.
Right, no, I understand it's plus or minus,
No,
but
that's part of the reason I had the questioning of the fence, was I looked at the same thing. So,
I
and
thought
that's
it was
why,
the fence farther back that was, but it could be both.
yep. So no, that's why I think we need to make sure his surveyor actually surveys accurately.
Thank you.
So, okay, let's see, 283 Dedham Street.
So 283 Dedham was a demo permit to the building department. There are wetlands on the site. But we did get a wetland delineation plan from them and a letter attesting to the fact they did an inspection. All demo work is outside the buffer zone, so they're okay. But I've heard that, and I'm not sure how accurate it is, but they may be proposing an expansion of the building there for some kind of educational use. And so if there is work in the buffer, they'll be back before us for an NOI.
Okey-doke. And was it 283 that led to questions about 36 Wilsondale?
Or vice versa, yes.
Yes.
Yep.
I was viewing it like multiplication, either way. So next there is so 283 is actually in the clear. 36 Wilsondale may not be.
So I think we sent 2 letters to Bobby Keene, the owner, asking for more information on the reported fill coming into the site. And I think Lori sent something out, but I think we were asking him to attend tonight's meeting to give us more information. So I'm not sure where to go with that.
Have you heard anything back from Lori?
So 36, letter went out to 283 also about the tree removal in the beginning. And he had requested a site visit, all of that, but maybe that's not going to be required now because the plan was submitted for the
Mhm.
demo. I don't know. But 36, yeah, a letter went out to him. And let's see, I resent, Janet had emailed him with 4 requirements and I sent that with the letter. And then he came into the office and I resent it to him in an email. And he said he was going to, he said, I'm not really good with computers. Some of the things were like photos and stuff. And I said, well, if you can drop anything off here and I'll scan it and get it to the commission. But he didn't do that. And then just a couple days ago, is that the one that I had sent the picture out to you all? It was a really blurry picture. And off the top of my head, I don't know if I think that was 36 Wilsondale. And he was showing the piles, but they're all snow covered now. So he was supposed to email documents to
he-
me and he didn't.
Was he
and
maintaining that he wasn't near any wetlands, or what was he, did he have any point of view there?
He was just, he sent an email and I forwarded it to everyone. I'm not sure exactly what he was talking just about the piles, but there were other things than those 4 items. Janet could probably tell you from her email, but they were all sent to him. He did say he didn't know if he could make the 12th, and I told him about our meeting on the 26th. But
Well,
I thought
you sent something, but there's no attachments to it. It just has your request to him email, and then an email back that is from him, but it has nothing. in
letter,
it.
the paper letter had Janet's 4 requirements.
Right,
And
and
then
your
the
email,
email had it as well.
yep, and then
Okay.
you forwarded to all of us an email
Photo that he
from
sent.
Bobby Keene, but it doesn't have anything
No photo?
in it except for a copy of the letter of the email that you sent him. It doesn't
Oh,
have a picture
really?
attached.
He sent me the photo and I thought I forwarded it to all you guys. Okay.
Mhm.
But it
So
was a very
regardless, it
blurry
sounds-
photo.
It says it's a forward, but it didn't work. That's
It
all.
didn't
Oh,
ring it along.
okay.
Okay.
Sorry about
Somehow
that.
it
So-
got unattached in the
And
process.
it also, I mean, please send it, but at the same time, I'm just
There were
sort of-
3 other
I'm not-
its anyway, I think that were on
Yeah,
there.
but it's
Janet
also,
could
the
probably
picture
tell you.
doesn't sound like it would be helpful.
It,
But let's
I didn't think
Yeah.
it was
But
okay.
what
So
was
let's see if we can
requested.
get him in here for the 26th, and, but you didn't get a sense that he was denying anything, or?
No,
was-
no, he just was saying, oh, I'm not good with computers, and I
Did-
said,
what
and
did-
that's
did
when
he
I
say he
said,
was-
bring stuff
did he
in and
mention-
I'll scan it.
Did he
I
mention
don't
anything about,
remember.
did he
what
mention
the
anything about
other
these being temporary, or?
thing- He
or-
didn't get into any of that with me.
Okay, okay. Let's, we have a letter out. You've talked about the 26th. If you could send a reminder out to him about
Yeah,
the meeting
yeah.
on the 26th, please.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, agent report.
Right, so I'll try to go through this pretty
Thank
quickly.
you.
I do want to have more of a discussion on our enforcement procedures and protocol. So my site visit at 90 Claybrook, I was uncomfortable. The homeowner did not want me there and made that very clear. And
Is that the husband who came to the door?
yes.
That you?
And
Mhm.
and for proof that I had authority to be there, and I had already taken my pictures, and so I just left. But also, I was told by Walter, we were discussing enforcement situations, and I think I had mentioned this before, but that he had visited 36 Wilsondale in the past, and he and Craig Hughes at the time did a site inspection and then were sued by Mr. Keene for trespass.
Mm-hmm. And how far did that go?
Well, it was dismissed eventually, but
Mhm.
this has just made me a little more cautious about how I do site inspections for enforcement. Generally, I should always have consent of the owner. But sometimes I'll get a call from someone on the commission or someone else, and there is no one on the site. Either it's a vacant site or no one's there. And I am hesitant to go on the site and document violations if I don't have consent. So
Why don't we, how about if we get clarification from town council, what the actual law is? And
yes,
that we can have something printed up and laminated,
Yeah.
to address that?
Yeah.
Would that be, helpful?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's a great
So,
idea.
Lori, can you add that to our next, the next meeting that we have with, the monthly town council stop by?
So John, there is an alternative, and I know we haven't done this in a long, long time, but you can ask for a police escort.
I
Mhm.
was wondering about that. If you could,
Yeah,
if we
all,
could get,
all you have to do is call them, and if there's nobody there, give them a call, they'll come with you.
Well, so I think I'd like to have the clarification from town council, because
Sure.
the police department may not be aware of that, depending on their changes in personnel and stuff. And then once,
okay.
because they all want, they don't want to step on something unless they know they can.
Well,
Yeah,
they have in the past.
yeah,
Yeah,
and that's
but-
good. And we can remind the youngins there now that they have done that in the past. And yeah, so I think that's all good things for us to look into, so that you have a little bit more something to back you up, Janet.
Right.
So, mhm.
Okay, we talked about Springdale Meadows. I'll reach out to Bill to see if he can come to the 26th. I haven't gotten any responses for new members. But I did note, like Maureen, I think has a psychotherapy background, which could
Mhm.
help. But I think finding someone with like even an engineering background, and that was in the article. So we'll see. We'll see, and I'll forward those to everyone and Lori. You got the notice on the rail trail, public forum,
Yeah.
upcoming conferences.
Oh no, when did
Yeah.
you say I did?
She
I
sent
never-
that either today or yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exciting.
So
I sent that out, I think, on the 10th, or did I? Well, anyways, relatively
The
soon.
12th, you sent it on the 12th.
Okay,
I just printed it out to remind me.
so that's being held on the 25th. It's remote at 6:30. And it's on the
awesome.
website. Yeah.
Okay, great. No, well, that came in so recently. So yeah, excellent.
I did want to mention, you saw my email with my concerns about Cheney Engineering and RD in particular. I don't think any follow-up is needed. I just wanted,
I was just about to ask you about that because
So, and when did that email come out?
February 5th, she sent it to us.
yeah.
Oh,
It's nothing new, but I'll just say that I've spoken several times to Artie. He knows when our deadlines are. He also knows that I don't review things before a meeting. I send out my comments to everyone, and then
mhm.
that I can't make a decision on behalf of the commission, whether
Mhm.
information is adequate. All I can do is make a recommendation to the commission. So a little bit of a concern. The other thing I sent out today, 88 Pine Street. And Artie and Debbie Anderson were adamant that that was a intermittent stream, but it's not.
Mhm.
So I will be putting that into my report for the next meeting. So and I'm going to be checking very carefully every stream that comes up before us now.
So okay, I see. Yeah, that went up this afternoon.
But I'll be
And so interesting. So how did so you're basing this? It was an interesting thing that they submitted, saying that it didn't have a large enough watershed.
right.
Which
You
the
use
num
stats The only time you use stream stats, which really isn't that accurate, is if if you're trying to overcome a presumption.
Got it. And so if USGS is showing it, then stream stat is not important.
That's right.
Got it.
That,
And
screenshot sent from DEP guidance too.
excellent. Oh, is that where that came from?
Yeah, the USGS trumps everything.
Great. So good.
And that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Well, and then you had your MAC annual conferences coming up and things of that nature. So people can take a look at that and see if they want to.
And are you going to any of those?
I'm not sure if I'm gonna get to
No, I
go.
was asking Anna.
Oh,
I don't think so. I
I'm
had planned on
going
it
to
in
the
specific.
MLTC one, which is out in Amherst, Mass.
Yeah, that's the one that's on the 21st.
On a Friday.
Yeah. I was just wondering, because Anna, and you can probably get a lot of the certifications via Zoom. But
Oh yeah, I should work on that.
yeah, you should work on it. It doesn't take that long. It takes you
No,
about,
I've done some of it. I
Yeah.
just haven't finished.
yeah. And I'm just
Like
wondering
the
if,
rest of us.
I'm just wondering if MACC has any recommendations for us to recruit new
That's-
commissioners.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. And as
I mean, I know a board member, so I can reach out to my friend and ask him if they have any, if you want me to.
you did this. I remember this came up years ago. Do you have to be a town resident to be on
Yes.
the commission? Okay.
Oh.
Because that was something with what was his name?
Ours.
Horace, when he was moving from town.
Yep.
Oh, he couldn't do it when he moved from one town to another town.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's Sherburne has this little magic, although I don't know if it extends out to the Conservation Commission, but it certainly works for their trails. But
I don't think it does. I mean, I don't know, because I just know that they're two separate things.
Yeah, no, one is a little bit more enjoyable. I think. So,
I'm trying to encourage sustainability folks who are interested in sustainability, but we didn't have space for to come over here. But it's more work.
So well, we'll just keep at it, and maybe when I know I'm gonna. Well, I was just thinking it's tough to network on for the rail trail if it's all virtual. I was imagining a room full of people, and you can go, oh, well, join us.
They ought to have a in-person one once
At some point.
well, the
You're right.
community center's got to open some year, right?
I think it's opening in March, supposedly, right?
I don't think it ever opens.
Last time I heard it was February, and looks like it's February now, and it's not. And if it's going to be March, they've got an awful lot of cleanup to do.
Well,
it looks like a mess.
It's sometime soon. We hear just around the corner.
Yes.
Not that corner.
Maybe it's March
Other
next
corner.
year.
No, I heard it was March this year, but we'll see.
Fingers crossed. I know that my wife has been going to other community centers because we're talking to some of the people at the rail and trail thing, and actually there were a fair number of people from Dover there, and they were talking about using Medfield and Needham's rail trails, as which my wife and I do as well. So it's be nice to be able to stay home one of these days. Okay, well, thank you much, everyone, and
You do know that I was on the original rail trail committee, and I can't even remember when that ended.
Oh no, and that
Maybe it's still going. You never know.
No, it's not.
No, and then they shifted from steam to diesel, and it was.
Oh.
So Tim, so how long ago was that? In the 90s, 95?
Probably.
No, it's
probably 20 years.
Yeah.
I think it was the early 2000s. It was
before I moved.
It was after, because Wild Woods was 2003, so it was after Wild Woods.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Because I remember being at a public hearing where they were talking about bringing the commuter rail back out. And so that
Oh,
was
that was a
pre-
long time.
yeah, that
before
Oh,
was
that
pre
was a lot
2000.
longer.
Yeah, yeah. And
That
there were
was Minnow Koenig.
there were a lot of people, not a
Wow.
lot. There were a number of people who were mentioning in veiled terms that they basically were afraid that people were going to take the train out and steal. And
Oh,
I
yes.
And then
Steal
and so
what?
they're,
I
Other
they're
properties and then get back on the train.
on
go
their
back
one
out?
trip out and one trip
Right.
in.
which
a
I
week,
brought to their attention
day?
that they would have to come out, they'd have to walk miles plus hundreds of yards up, people's driveways. TVs back in the day weighed 200 pounds. I said, and then they were going to struggle back or maybe put it on a red wagon, and then everyone stealing from them would be lined up on the train platform waiting for the train. And is that what they were afraid of?
So somebody did a calculation of how many knit riders would
Oh yeah,
the
it was
increase
really
would
low.
be. And for the cost, the amortized cost, basically the interest on a loan, you could buy all those people a new Mercedes every year. Plus,
Yeah.
plus parking.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was not going to be utilized very
It was
much.
ridiculous.
So anyway, well, let's looking forward to that meeting on the 25th. And thanks
When
again,
when
everyone.
they give out our new Mercedes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm here
yes,
for that.
we'll have that Janis Joplin song. And
Oh, Lord.
okay. Night, everyone.
Good
Hearing
night.
no objections tonight.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Right.